We're back, and we are doing, I got to throw this out to ChatGPT. Let's see. So we are going to do, where did I put that? That's the Michael one. The other channel, Estimation Essentials, how to nail pricing for development projects. Wow, this is always a fun one.
And always a challenging one.
This is like, I get these questions all the time. I'm like, how do you do this? How do you price that? And then it's like, it's such a personal choice kind of thing almost. It's like, I don't know how many times, and I don't know how many times I've talked to people and said, okay, this is what you should do. It's not necessarily what I do, but this is my understanding. This is what you should do. And then they don't do it anyway. So it's just like, okay, so why did you bother? Why did you waste my time? Because I think a lot of times people fall back on I am going to price it to whatever I can do to make sure somebody buys the freaking product or buys my time. Where is you? There is you. So I can paste that here. I need to do this. So I've got my crap in front of me this time, and I'm not so completely disjointed. And let's see.
I don't know if you're doing this, but I found you can pull the chat out of Slack, so it can kind of be full screen if you slide it to the side without having that little dash bar thing in the way.
Oh, I mean in Zoom or in
Slack?
Oh, yeah, I don't. I've done it a couple different ways because my last place I was at. There was like, I don't know, 400 Slack threads or something like that. So I was constantly doing that and organizing and moving around. It was funny because there was a system they used and it just got flooded with too much stuff and everybody ignored everything. And so they switched everything to email. And the email is like, I literally got thousands, 100 plus some of email every single day. And a lot of it was stuff that was system. This goes back to our prior conversation a little bit. Systems that were saying, I'm okay. It's like, then don't tell me. Tell me when you blow up. And it would go to everybody. It would go to like groups would be hundreds and hundreds of people. So it's like, nobody's going to do it because somebody's going to fix it, not me. And so nobody ever did. It was a waste. It just went right away into delete. And it was a waste. And then Slack, and they're like, okay, we're going to use Slack. And then next thing you know, Slack is just slammed with stuff. And it's just.
So this is like a good pre-bonus one, especially like what Rob's mentioning. And one of the things that becomes dangerous with this for production support is you become message blind or error blind because you're getting too many notifications, or you're getting notifications that, yes, the system's broken, but it's not your problem. So you start to ignore it and you start to not see the messages, even though they're coming to you. And then eventually you're going to miss a critical one where the systems are down. And at that point, your phone's going to start ringing. So it's better to ask yourself, one, what notifications are important? And two, why are we getting so many notifications? Because if you're getting too many notifications, chances are you need to redo what type of notifications you're actually sending out. Either start turning off or turning up the severity on what is being reported, or you need to redo your guidelines as to how you write software and how you send out notifications.
A lot of times it is. It's stuff that you should be looking at that and you should be regularly going through. And if you're getting a lot of like warnings that aren't really don't rise that level, either it's sooner or later fix it. Either that's not really a warning and it's a false positive, or it is, and go fix the stupid thing so that you don't have those and clean it up. I mean, it is sometimes time consuming. It is almost always technical debt of some sort, but it is worthwhile. It's like going through when you've got like compile errors, but you also have warnings, is getting it completely clean from the warnings as well, which sometimes is useless. It's not like, or doesn't help that much, but it is just nice to get everything clean so you don't have to worry about it. All right. Speaking of clean, so you don't have to worry about it, we have a clean takeoff ready to go. We have been given the go ahead. And so let's dive right into this. Hello and welcome back. We are continuing our season of Building Better Developers, Developer Podcast with AI. Okay, crappy sound effect things that were there. What we're doing is we're looking at a couple seasons back. We're taking the topics and we're just redoing it. It sounds lazy, but it's actually pretty cool. We're throwing it into AI and saying, AI, what would you do? And then we're talking about what AI kicks back out. And it almost always, yes, there's a few things that it covers that we already talked about, but it almost always spurs other conversation points. Now, first off, I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. I am Rob Broadhead, one of the founders of Developneur, also the founder of RB Consulting, where we are like the simplest way to do this is say, I help businesses simplify their technology and build clear roadmaps that fuel growth. That's like one of those like AI kind of answers right there, but it's what it is. That's what you want. It's like, what do we do? We are sometimes known as a fractional CIO or things along those lines. We're also a boutique business consultancy. What we do is we sit down with our customers. We talk about their processes. Hopefully they know them. If not, we'll help you work through your process, get some of that stuff that's in your head out of your head. We also know some nice process consultants and stuff like that that can help you get that part of your house straightened out. And then once your house is straightened out, now we can talk about how to do it better, more efficiently. We can simplify, integrate, automate, innovate. We can find ways to do those steps for that process better, faster, higher quality. Now you get to work on your business instead of in your business, and your customers love you because that's how the natural order of things is. Check us out at rb-sns.com. We have a whole new website, sort of, and we've got content's been around for years, but we've also updated a lot of stuff. So love to hear feedback on that. Also, matrix.rb-sns.com. You can go check that tool out. We're soft launching it, I guess. Maybe this is now a hard launch. However you look at it, some of the stuff that we've got to just help people out if you're wondering where you sit in your need for a technology assessment. Good thing, bad thing. Good thing is that we have downsized and we've got like so many things that we don't worry about anymore. Like we don't worry about if the yard gets mowed because we don't have a yard basically, and things like that we're like, we've simplified our life down so that we're much more mobile and things like that. Bad side of that is we're an apartment. We don't have like, what we used to have. You could go out to the mailbox, you had a front door. So like deliveries that come to the front door, you can go to the mailbox, you get your mail. We now have to go somewhere else. And when deliveries come, sometimes they don't go to the place that they should. And so a bad example of like what can happen is we have a restaurant that is attached to where we're at. And we had a delivery that got delivered to the restaurant. It disappeared off the face of the earth at that point. We figured out because they sent us, which is great. We got the typical picture of here's your product being delivered. It's like a picture of this product being handed off to somebody, and that's all we know. And we got that. It's like, what the heck? That's not even close to a mailbox, but that's okay. You guys took it to the wrong place. One of those bad things. Out there in the middle of nowhere, Michael gets everything to his front door, I am sure, or one of his front doors anyways, and he's going to go introduce himself.
Hey everyone, my name is Michael Meloche. I'm one of the co-founders of Developneur. I'm also the founder and owner of Envision QA, where we help startups and growing businesses build software that works the way it's supposed to from day one. We make sure that software is what it's supposed to be and make your customers happy. You probably have heard stories of software projects going over budget, launching late, or breaking once users get their hands on it. That's where we come in. At Envision QA, we make sure that your product is tested, stable, and ready for the customer. We handle the behind-the-scenes quality checks and support development so that you don't have to worry about that. We help you launch faster, avoid costly mistakes, and protect your reputation. In short, we help you build software that doesn't break your business. Check us out at envisionqa.com. Good thing, bad thing. Good thing, we are in, I guess, what's called a false fall. I think it's fall. We're cooling off. Bad thing, my wife loves her little 10-foot pool we put up every year for her to cool off after doing all the yard work since it gets so bloody hot here. Unfortunately, we have now hit that point where the pool is now staying so cold we can't get in it anymore. So we have to break it down.
Yes, I was actually just in the lake the other day, and it was still almost bath warm kind of thing. So it was like it was nice because it was a little breezy, but I think a little cooler would have been even better. Cooler than that is where we're going now. So we're going to talk this time around. The original topic was estimation essentials: how to nail pricing for development projects. Episode flow. Oh, again, this was ChatGPT 5, and it comes back. It gets like right to business. It did give me the obligatory perfect title, and then it gives me this stuff. It's just like, okay, here you go. Episode flow hook, 1 to 2 minutes. Open with a common pain point. Ever been asked how much will this cost, and your stomach drops? Estimation is one of the trickiest but most important skills in software development. Tease the payoff. Better pricing means happier clients, less stress, stronger career growth. First section here, or I guess the second section after the hook, why estimation matters, 3 to 4 minutes. It's more than numbers. It builds trust and credibility, impacts timelines, client satisfaction, and profitability, sets the tone for whether a project feels like a success or failure. That is it in a nutshell. That is why we estimate. That is why we need to be honest about our estimation. I spent a good deal of time today walking through essentially it was an RFP that somebody spent a good deal of time putting it together. There's a lot of detail to it. They're merging a couple applications, and they talked about okay, here's the features from this one, and this is how they're going to join in and what it's going to look like. Here's some other things that we want to do. And it was really good. I'm cruising along. I'm like, yep, that's going to take X amount of time. That's going to take Y amount of time. And I'm just cranking through. And then I get to a section that is way open-ended. We want to have integrations with a bunch of payment processors like A, B, and C. Like that. And we would like to integrate with different accounting systems like this one. But there's other systems that they haven't talked about. And then there's some other things that they talk about that are like integrations and things like that. It's like, okay. And I had to take that section, and that's where you just be honest with them and say, I can't give you a valid estimate on this. I have no idea what it can take. There's not enough details. Nothing is some amount does not give me an X amount. So if I don't know how many things you're going to integrate with, I cannot possibly tell you what it's going to cost to do that. I can't even tell you, if you can't tell me which ones they are, I can't really give you an estimate per, because some are going to be easier than others. And depending on what you include and what that integration looks like, I'm not going to be able to help you out. I can't, or at least I can't at this point give it to you. Now, granted, this is something that you start into that conversation. But the reason I bring this up is that I think too often we end up in, at least I know I do, run into situations where the customer really wants a hard number. They want to say, it's going to cost $10 to get this built. Okay. The problem is we can give them a number like that, but if you're smart, your number is going to be insanely big. If you think it's going to cost $10, you're going to say it's going to cost $100 or something like that. This goes back to setting expectations. And if they balk at it and say, well, look, I don't know that it's really going to take that much, but I have to do that to be safe, because it could. Because you could change your mind. There could be requirements we haven't talked about. There are requirements that you haven't actually detailed. And I can guess at this stuff, but I'm not the customer. I'm not the one that's building it. So be honest where there's things you're like, well, we need to talk about this more. And it's not, don't say it can't be done or we can't estimate it or anything like it. It's just like, at this time, we can't give you a valid number. We can't give you something that works because we don't have enough information. So instead of us giving you just something that we've pulled out of thin air, we're going to sit down and talk to you, and then we'll give you, a timeline and estimates and things like that. We'll give you the details that are needed to actually build out that pricing. And the last thing before I toss it over is make sure when you estimate that you are honest. Like if you're a developer, just always overestimate. If you think you're estimating too high, you're still too low. Developers are horrible about, I'm going to get it done in a month. And 6 months later, you're still working on stuff. Part of it is our fault because we think we can do everything instantly. Part of it is the fault of the project managers and the customers, because they start with something small and then things start to get added on. And the next thing you know, it's bigger. And bigger takes more time. Don't fall into the trap. I know I said one more. Okay. The last one. the last one more. Don't fall into the trap of a customer that's like, well, we could do it for that, but then they try to, lowball you a little bit, like, but gosh, we really had a budget at what, 90% of what it was. It's like the value is the value. The cost is a cost. It's like you don't get into a cab with somebody, get halfway through the ride and say, hey, can you shut that flag down and turn the meter off for a while? Because I don't really want to pay that much for this cab ride. It's sort of the same concept. Your thoughts on this?
So you kind of touched on most of the points on this one. I don't want to beat this too much, but one of the big things is be honest. Don't lie to the customer. Don't overpromise, although that can still happen, but don't deliberately overpromise and underdeliver. We want to, underpromise and overdeliver. So, like Rob said, if you think it's going to cost $10, charge 100. If you think there's underlining issues that could arise that could have things go off, go off the rails. The best example of this was something I read about the airlines years ago. So airline satisfaction was horrible and down. People were constantly complaining about airlines never being on time, ticket prices being too high, and so on. One of the biggest things I heard about how this model changed was what they did was they increased the time of the flights. They decreased the cost a little bit, but they changed the expectation. Essentially, how long is it going to take to do something? And all of a sudden, customer relations went up. Customers were more satisfied. Trips were not taking so long. Flights weren't being canceled. So it is along those same lines. Make sure that what you are looking at fits within the expectations of the project and your customer's expectations. If you say it's going to be done in a week and you don't deliver within a week, you're going to have an upset customer, and that is going to impact your business and your reputation.
And then we'll go right into the common pitfalls because you've actually touched on a few of those. Overpromising, underestimating to win a project, then burning out. Ignoring hidden costs, meetings, testing, documentation. Forgetting risk buffers, unexpected issues always show up. Using gut feeling instead of a repeatable process. I'm going to start with the underestimating to win a project, then burning out, because if you're side hustling, I have seen a lot of those. I have struggled with that at times, and I have been the beneficiary of that several times where somebody got into a project and then flaked out and disappeared because they just got worn out. The problem is that they screwed over their customer. They are not going to get that customer again. And a lot of times I end up winning that customer because I come in and say, okay, we're going to take this to the finish. And yeah, it's nice because they got it 80% there. So now we have a better idea of what's left. But particularly with a side hustle, I know you go into it because most of us do, where you're like, I have a day job, my bills are paid, blah, blah, blah. I'm just doing this for fun. Projects become not fun on a regular basis. There's always going to be something where you're like, I would really like to have a weekend off, but no, I'm still working on this stinking project. And so be aware of that. Make sure you're setting yourself up for success, not just them, but yourself as well. The last part I want to touch on too is the whole don't use gut feeling instead of a repeatable process. This is why we estimate. This is why we need to, even in our own projects, have a feel for like, what are we doing? How much time are we spending? How much time are we wasting? Because that commonly is our issues. I don't know how many times somebody's like, I was working for 10 hours today. And you figure out that, well, yeah, they were at work. They were at their desk for 10 hours, but they spent, 3 hours like lost in listening to the news, or they got caught into something. They had to go walk the dogs a bunch of time or whatever. It's like, find ways to figure out exactly when you're working. I could go back to my favorite Pomodoro and things like that, because those things really, really will help you like know when you're focusing and when you're not, because that's a whole focus. That's a whole reason for those is focus, do your stuff, and then move on. And you're going to realize that you're not going to work 8 hours a day. That 8 hours or 10 hours or 24 hours that you thought you were working, if you're doing a focused method like that, you're going to realize, one, you're going to realize that that's not how much you're working, but two, you're going to get more done when you do it because you're not going to have all of those distractions. You already started, so I'll let you just sort of carry on with some of the common pitfalls and what you see.
Yeah, so the one I'll touch on is the hidden costs, because you and I have talked about this off, on the side quite a bit, because a lot of times we forget there are meetings, you have to do testing, there's documentation. And when you plan out a project, especially if you're doing this as a side hustle, you're not going to think about these at all. You're just thinking about how long does it take to get this done. The problem is if you go in with that mindset and you don't think of this as a full project. Now, if you're building a website, okay, maybe not as much, but you still have to think about documentation. But testing and meetings when you have larger teams is critical. You need to make sure you plan for this, because if you have, say, 20 hours a week for a budget and you have a team of 4, you want to make sure that you're optimizing as much time for development as you can, but you still need to account for those meetings. If you schedule 2-hour meetings into that time frame, that's 2 times 4, you've lost time. So either you tack that on early, add it to the estimation to your budget, and then you plan for that ahead of time.
And it adds up. Time adds up really quick. Meetings in particular. One of the, just to add to that, one of the things I find most often gets lost is once you get to a team is project management kind of stuff, which is meeting with the team, but also meeting with the customer and doing like statuses and things like that. If you meet every day during the week for a half hour, that's 2.5 hours a week. And if you're saying that we're going to just tack 10% on to the end of the, to the total, that's only 10% means you're for, 10% for project management basically means you're 10% of your week, 4 hours. That basically means you're budgeting 4 hours of project management stuff. If you spend 2.5 hours just managing the team, then there's not much else you're going to do. If that project manager is also looking at like creating tickets and chasing down tasks and doing statuses and things like that, you can burn through that very quickly. Testing is another one that don't think there's going to get away with like a 5%, upcharge or whatever on top of it for testing. And it gets scary, but it gets real, because you're going to go do your, I've got a 200-hour development estimation I put together. And then when you add on, maybe another 5% on top of that for documentation, and 20% on top of that for testing, and 10%, 15% for project management, depending on your size, those things add up really, because those percentages that's another 40 or 50% sometimes that goes on top of it. But that's where we get hosed, because we get to the end of the 200 hours and we still have 100 hours of work to do because we didn't figure it out from the start. We didn't set the standards. We didn't set expectations. And now we're begging for money or saying, I'm sorry, or working for free. None of that is beneficial. None of that is fun. Approaches to estimation. Bottom up, break work into tasks, estimate each piece. Top down, use similar past projects to guide estimates. 3-point estimation, PERT. Optimistic, pessimistic, most likely. Time and materials versus fixed price, the pros and cons of each. I will briefly touch on time and materials is almost always the way to go. Fixed price, you can do it, but oh my gosh, you better know exactly you better have done this a lot of times. You better know exactly what you're talking about. And don't let yourself get caught in the time and materials, but it's actually a fixed price, because I have seen that has been used a couple of times to say, look, we'll pay you we'll pay you by the hour, but we're going to limit the number of hours per week or month or whatever the time, there's going to be a limit to those. There's going to be a cap. And then somewhere down the road, there's a cap to the whole project. So effectively, they're trying to win on either end of it. If it gets done faster, they don't pay as much for hours. But if it goes beyond, they're not paying for the beyond. It's one or the other. If it's time and materials, more of the risk goes on the customer, because they want it to get done, because the longer it goes, the more you're getting paid. If it is fixed bid, then you're holding on to the risk. So if it's time and material, it should be more aggressive pricing and things like that. They should be getting their money's worth and then some. If it is fixed, then you should be getting a premium on that. And it's now if you want to do something where there's early bonuses or there's going to be penalties if they're late, that's all great. I mean that kind of stuff works. I've found several times that one of the best ways to do it is say, here's what our rate's going to be. We're going to do $5 an hour, but once it gets past a certain point, because we're pretty sure we're going to get it done by this time. If we don't, then we're going to cut it in half, or we're going to go to $4 an hour, or whatever it is to say, okay, you're getting discounts as a customer because we didn't give you the proper estimate. That means we both hurt, and hopefully means that everybody's going to get the stuff done as fast as possible. The other methods, you end up working against your customer way too often. I spent enough on that I'm just going to throw it back over to you.
Yeah, so you touched on the one I was going to hit, but I'll start with this one. The 3-point estimation, the PERT: optimistic, pessimistic, and most likely. Be careful with this one. Well, it is beneficial to what's the best case scenario, what's the worst case scenario, and try to take something in the middle. Sometimes that's not always possible because there are always external or additional factors that you just don't account for. It could be COVID. It could be, the current version of Windows is now obsolete. Things like that you just have to deal with as they come along. But that could be the pessimistic approach. However, when you're doing the pessimistic approach, you're probably not thinking that pessimistic. You're probably not thinking that worst case disaster. So you have to balance the good with the bad. But this goes kind of back to what we talked about before, where you need to make sure that you've broken down the requirements for what this project's going to be clearly enough that you can define, okay, this is what this should take. This is, if we can't complete this, this is what it should take. If you get to those sections, like Rob said, where he had like, it could go to this, accounting system. It could go to this payer. Those things you can't touch because you don't have enough information. So if you follow this and you get to that point and you're like, wait, optimistically, yeah, if we know who this is, we could possibly do it. But if you have a lot of those questions, that's when you need to go back and solidify that. Nail down some of those requirements before you get too far.
And if you can't, because I had a customer, this reminds me of a customer I had a while back, and we ended up sideways with each other basically because I said, okay, here's the and he wanted the optimistic. He really was like, I need the optimistic. And I was like, okay, well, that's very optimistic. And sure, that would work if everything falls into place. I said, but these are the things that can go wrong. And this is and any one of them can take us off track. And as we did them, as we were going through, almost everything that he said was like, well, this is great, and this is working, and this will be fine. And all these optimistic assumptions he made were wrong. They turned out to be untrue. And so as we got through them, I was steadily communicating to him that, okay, we thought this would happen. It didn't. It's going to cost us X amount of time. It's like, we thought this was going to take a week. We can't do it in a week because the things that we assumed are wrong. So now we got to go back and fix those. And now it's going to take a month instead of a week. And even though, and this is like part of why I'm not a real fan of this anyways, is that he got stuck in his head the original optimistic stuff. He kept going back to that, be like, we should be here, we should be here, we should be here. Even though there was a steady stream of communication. Usually people are going to be more realistic and you're going to have that steady stream of communication. They're going to see what's going on. They're going to say, okay, we're falling into the problems. And they're either going to they may cut the project short or they may change gears or whatever, but don't hide it from them because you're worried it's going to get cut short, because then your butt should get cut short at the end. And when they find out that, you hosed them, give them that information as soon as possible so that your customer can make an intelligent decision, and one that's, now it's setting the proper expectations. And sometimes there's going to be stuff that's like, well, can you help us with that? How can we find a way? We can't really afford that pessimistic, but what can we do? And there should be options. Just find like MVPs and things like that to save your customer from the reality of life, essentially. Practical steps to improve estimates. Requirements first. Clarify what's in scope and what's not. Ask questions before giving numbers. Break it down. Smaller tasks equals more accurate estimates. Add buffers, typically 20 to 30% for risks, unknowns, and scope creep. Validate with data. Track actuals versus estimates. Learn from past projects. Your estimates should improve over time. Communicate clearly. Share not just a number, but assumptions behind it. Example, 2 weeks, assuming APIs are stable and no new features are added. Definitely that's exactly what I was talking about. Is like, wherever you're giving the optimistic, the pessimistic, or the mid-range kind of estimate, talk about not only what it is, but why it is. What are the unknowns? What are the risk factors? Ideally, this is pro tip or whatever. When you're getting into a project, the high risk items are the first things you should tackle. Those are the first things you should start looking into, because then you're going to know as soon as possible that, yeah, that's going to work out, or no, it's not, and start finding ways to be able to work around it. If you wait to the end, then you're going to have a lot less, way fewer options to do workarounds. Just trust me. It's always giving yourself that time. It gives you more time to redesign, to replan, to adjust, and do the things that you need to. I would say clarify what's in scope and what's not. That reminds me of like MVPs, is saying, okay, well, what is really the minimum viable product? What is it that we like, the minimal amount of work that we need to get this done? I am starting to have that conversation with my customers from the very get-go, because it is way too easy for things to get added, for things to get moved. And as we're going through the project and we're adding things in, and they're like, can we do this early on? It's like, yeah, okay, we'll tack that on, and we'll tack that on, especially if it's not fixed bid. And it's just like, okay, we'll tack it on, but it's going to take another week. We'll tack it on. It's going to take another week. It's going to take another week. And the next thing you know, it's 6 months beyond what the original target date is. They're frustrated. They realize that they've got to get it done faster, or market changes, or there's so many things that can happen that can cause you to get to a point where suddenly the project goes into like critical mode, where we got to get just the things we need and get this thing shipped out the door. And maybe they run out of funding. There's so many things that can happen. So I have found that it is much more valuable from the start to have those critical, we'll call them those critical things that are part of an MVP, because that provides you your second round of stuff. Is you get the high risk stuff, so you right away just go after those things and figure out, are those risks real? Are they imaginary? What are they? And then you go right into, this is what we have to have. These are the features that have got to be there, because that's going to protect your customer and the project, so that if things do go squirrely, if they do start to, you have all kinds of issues and overruns, you do have like a fallback, basically, so you can get something out the door that still gets them a win and allows you to, push off some of those bigger issues. Thoughts from you?
So I'm going to go with the break it down and add buffers. So because I like the test-driven approach, you can almost apply that to your estimation. If you can break down the requirements in such a way that you understand what needs to be done in such a way where if A, then B, then it's a small enough task that you should fairly easily be able to say, okay, that's about an hour task. Then tack on 20 to 30% on top of that for any unknowns. If you can't quite get it to that, again, get it to a point where you have at least broken it down to where you have specific enough requirements to where you know what the task needs to be to get it done. If you have those tasks where, hey, we want to integrate with accountants, or we want to integrate with payers, that's not small. That is too open-ended, too vague. And at that point, you can't even track it. You can't even really estimate. So if you can break it down to small enough tasks, you're going to be more accurate with your estimations. And again, always tack on that additional 20 to 30% for the unknown.
Well, we have once again run into time constraints and such, because these are really good topics that they come up with. Who knows? We may have to come back around to this at some point, just because, or we'll just keep doing these kinds of things and just retread some of our past episodes and continually have new content and such. However, I would love for you to send us an email at info@developernerd.com and let us know what you think. What do you like? What don't you like? What would you like us to address? How would you like us to change stuff around? How would you like us to add, delete, all of that kind of stuff? All of the CRUD options that are out there for Developreneur itself. You can also leave us feedback wherever you listen to podcasts. You can give us any kind of rating, 1 to 5, like it, love it, whatever their different rating scales are. More importantly than your rating is your actual word feedback, like what did you like, what don't you like, what can we do better, what can we do to help you become a better developer. Check us out at developernerd.com. We got feedback forms and everything there. We got tons and tons of comments. That is probably going to be going through a revamp. I've promised that for a while, but I'm actually finally getting to that point. It's like working my way down to that on my to-do list. Also, you can check us out on Facebook. You can follow us on X at Developreneur, DEVELPRENEUR.com. And you can find us there. Also, you can find us here. Wherever you're watching us or listening to us right now, come back, because subscribe, do all that good stuff, because we're not done yet. We are marching on towards 1,000 episodes. We are like 900s in the rearview mirror, and we're moving on. Talking to somebody today, and he was like, wow, I remember when you first started it. It was like weird that it's already there. And I was like, I actually remember when I first started it too, because I was there. But also, and I think he may have been the only person that's like been subscribed all the way through. That being said, all of you, whether you started at episode 1 or episode 901, appreciate all that you do. Appreciate you coming out and spending some time with us. Go out there and have yourself a great day, a great week, and we will talk to you next time. Bonus material. So let's see. I'll wrap up these. Career angle. Why this builds better developers. Developers who estimate well are seen as leaders. It shows business awareness, not just technical skills. Builds trust with clients, managers, and teammates. Opens doors to roles like team, lead, architect, or consultant. Call to action. Encourage listeners to review their last project. Did actual time match the estimate? Where did it go off track? Suggest keeping a personal estimation log for a reference. Tie back to Developreneur. We don't just code, we build careers by mastering the whole craft. Bonus add-ons, war story segment, share a time you underestimated or overestimated and lessons learned. Mini challenge, estimate a small side project like building a to-do app and then track the actual time. Where do you want to go with your bonus material?
So I'll take that last one, that mini challenge, because kind of did one like this way back. If you go back into our videos, there's a building a product catalog that we did years ago. That is a perfect one for this mini challenge. Take something that you have, like a to-do list, a task list, something that you just do every day, maybe write down, and then try to break it down into its pieces and see how long it would take you to actually automate that or build an application for that. This could also then easily become one of those automation things that we talk about all the time, like, hey, automate your tasks. So I really challenge you, our listeners, to do something like this. Find an everyday task that you do every day. See if you can break it down into a project and then write it or automate it in such a way that, okay, how long is it going to take? And then do it. And then once you're done, reflect. How long did it actually take you to do it? Were your requirements pretty spot on, or were you off track? If this is something you do every day or something that you shouldn't be off track. But I guarantee you there's going to be something you find that you're like, whoops, I didn't think of that. Or you've scope creeped and added things to it. So kind of track that. Think through that process.
I guess I want to go with that one too, is that when you do that, when you start tracking what you're doing to build an application or to solve a problem, there are areas that we lose time. I was complaining to my wife yesterday about getting lost on a rabbit trail with ChatGPT, not work related. It was something completely different, but I was like, I had to answer one question. And the next thing I know, I had fallen down a pit of asking a lot of other questions, and I had great stuff. I mean, I got a lot of information out of it. It was really valuable, but totally took me off track. If you're like me, if you're doing things like design, it is real easy to lose 4 or 5 hours messing around with a couple of buttons and moving those around and changing some colors and adjusting some pixels here or there. If it's your own app or if it's something that you're able to have some level of design or creativity, it is amazing how often that you're going to do like a refactor or something like that, where you're like, okay, I'm going to go do this, I'm going to change that, or I want to move this, or I want to clean this up, or there's all these little things, but they add up. And so I think that is really valuable for you to track that stuff, because then you're going to figure out where you lose your time, because that's probably more important than anything, because there's going to be times that you're still going to do those tasks. But the good thing is now you're going to be like, oh, I have to watch out because I can lose a lot of time. So I need to time box this, or I need to set alarms or do something so that I don't end up losing my entire day working on whatever that feature or that functionality is. That being said, we have, as we always do, drifted all over the place in our time management and things like that. So we are not the best at that. But this is different. we're better. I'm going to say we're better when we do it with coding and applications. Maybe we are, maybe we're not. That's something we're still working on. And we do track these kinds of things so we can get better. As always, I would love any kind of feedback you leave us. Gave you all the places and all the things. So for now, we're just going to let you have some of your time back. Go out there and have yourself a great day. Thank you so much. We appreciate you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.